Water Agency Board of Trustees meeting. It is 6 p.m. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to call this meeting to order with a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. I am Bob Lux. I'm currently the president. I am here. Ron Wilson, vice president. Paul Martin, assistant secretary treasurer.
Here.
Walt Lashevsky, trustee.
Here.
Neil Gaynor, trustee.
Here.
Brad Hauk, trustee. Hello, Brad. Welcome. Kent Maggart, trustee. Welcome, Mr. Maggart. I don't see Mr. Lincoln. I see Mr. Apostolo.
I'm here.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, Sean. David Smith, trustee, is here. And Hugh is, of course, not here for business reasons, but Diane Nielsen, alternate trustee, is here. We have a quorum. We have an agenda. We're going to have a meeting. Start out with a moment of reflection. Heavenly Father, we come to you as an assembled body. We humbly request that you bless our meeting, our community, and our nation. Help us to diligently work for the common good and in the best interest of those who we have been elected to represent. Guide us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Work through us to provide a spirit of welcome in all in attendance, to engage in respectful and thoughtful dialogue and discussion with understanding, wisdom, and humility. Amen.
Amen.
If you wish, prior to reciting the pledges of allegiance, please take an additional moment of silent prayer or additional reflection in the manner of your preference. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance to the United States of America. Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. I'll talk to you later about this. Why this? Okay, we now are to agenda item number 3, and we have 2 residents who would like to speak. The first is Mr. Steve Lawrence, representing or as a from who resides in Mud 1. Mr. Lawrence? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, then we have Mr. Bob Merrill, resident of Mud 60, who has requested to speak to the board. Mr. Merrill, good evening.
Thank you very much for your time. I moved to the Woodlands over 20 years ago, and I've recently become involved in learning more about what is happening in water and wastewater utility systems. I've been watching the meetings on YouTube, reading minutes, and going over the 10-year project proposals from 23 and 24. I have an appreciation for the people and the organizations that serve the water and sewer customers and utility functions in all types of conditions, weather, power outages, and through communication disruptions. Projects in the 10-year plan appear reasonable, including replacing the wastewater treatment plant. My comments here tonight are to highlight what I see as gaps in explaining the differences in the 23 and 24 plans and better justification of the new plant technology. And realize that the sample size is n equals 1, but I might represent people that are hearing a lot of the conversations and maybe help with increase the explaining and the communication. First, the difference in total costs expected $622.8 million versus $370.7 million based on the new plan is reasonable and explainable. However, the funding sources in 23 showed $276 million to come from renewal and replacement funds. But then 24 plant that source is reduced by 70%. Why? In contrast, bond funding of $500 million proposed in 24 is over the 23 total project costs, which had no bond funding. I suspect there are reasons and the requirements for this change in funding But if material change is due to a new wastewater plant, then the information to support the recommendations, including a change in technology, need to be robust. I do think the explanations related to the need for the new plant as well as MBR technology are missing the mark. In the trustees meetings, there have been references to meetings where details were provided, but when questions have come up regarding the value of the new plant with MBR technology, there has been little detail on the major points that were relied upon to support this approach. This project description in the strategy plan is limited to ensuring high quality effluent and being prepared for requirements that may be imposed by the TCEQ. A replacement plan is needed. I think that's true. The design and technology proposed, if new, should be benchmarked against alternatives with clear justification based on the inputs, assumptions, and costs that were relied upon to support that recommendation, and that should still make sense today when compared to alternatives such as the current system. A cost delta would facilitate conversations pertaining to the value of the high quality effluent in the community over current technology. If this high quality effluent was envisioned and has funded or proposed plans for use in aquifer regeneration, surface water makeup, irrigation offset, or even drinking water, then that adds value to the technology. However, if the likelihood of this happening in the next 15 years or halfway through the new plant's lifespan is low, then the benefit will be lost downstream. If the cost delta is small, then that is good information to support the new technology. The second part, as it relates to the pending requirements, can basically defined as an insurance policy on what new regulations may be. What is the cost of the plant we build? What is the cost that the plant we build will not be able to meet insuring regulations during its lifetime and will need to fund upgrades, add-ons, or redesign? Again, the cost difference between what can be engineered and managed by using existing but upgraded design versus what can only be achieved at a better cost with MBR technology is something that I think should be communicated. If the benchmarks were not done as part of the analysis and options assessment, then I think the decision was premature. If it was in phase one strategic planning in some form, then the way it is being communicated by the trustees meetings and other online things that I am limited to see is lacking in terms of clear, tangible points of differentiation supporting a material shift in technology, strategic plan costs, and funding approach. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill.
Thank you.
Okay, we are to agenda item number 4. Receive update on Region H by Mr. Arthur Bradehoff. Good evening, Arthur.
New members, new trustees. My name is Arthur Breedoff, and I'm the Region H representative, represent water utilities. As information, there are 16 regional planning groups that are part of the Trustee Development Board, and Region H is one of those planning groups. Region H encompasses 15 counties. For example, Montgomery, Liberty, Harris, just to name a few. And it contains a number of river basins: Trinity, San Jacinto, and Nebraska. We sit in Region H, we sit on the largest petrochemical economic sector that represents about 2/3 of the U.S. total petrochemical output. So it's a large customer. We also have large customers in the area of medical and banking, just to give an insight on the economic engine that's located within Region H. We meet quarterly. Our next meeting is August the 7th. And what I always try to do is report out to the trustee board the following week when the trustees have a meeting. We have a quarterly meeting. Region H is working on our next water plan, and that's the plan for 26 through 31. The initial plan will be ready for submission with the Texas Water Development Board in March of 25, and the final plan has to be submitted to the Texas Water Development Board by October of 25. On your G drive, there's a Region H folder, so all the material that we get at the quarterly meeting resonates within that drive. And there is, for each planning group, there is a website for each planning group. So Region H has a website that you can go to and get all the material. You can get a copy of the 21 to 25 current plan. Just wanted to come by since we have new trustee members and provide a little insight into Region H. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your attending and serving in that capacity for us, Arthur. Okay, we now come to the consent agenda, pages 1 through 14 of our meeting packet.
Page 3, item 4. Got 3 lines from the bottom there. It says the city, that should be the city of Montgomery. And then the final line should be included on the Google Drive, I think, is intended there. Otherwise, motion to approve as presented.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this matter? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I abstain. Any no votes? So there's just one abstention because I was not in attendance. So I abstain from the review of the minutes portions there. Sir?
I'll abstain also since I wasn't there.
Okay, thank you.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 abstentions. Okay. Very good. Okay, the consent agenda is passed. We now come to the regular agenda item number 7. Consider an act on the election of WWA trustee board officers. Brian Yates, would you please give us the rules of the road and how we're going to conduct this matter?
This is an item we put on agendas similar to MUD's after each election cycle. You see, you do have some new trustees on the board this evening. Similar to the MUD's, if the board is satisfied with who currently holds a particular office, then there doesn't need to be a nomination on that position. If there is a nomination, then we proceed on to receiving any competing nominations. Nominations do not need a second. At the end, we either need to take a voice vote or a vote by paper ballots. If there are more than 2 nominees, we go through the first round. Then we narrow it down to the top 2, and we have a final vote. It does take 6 trustees to carry a nomination because this board is 10 trustees, a quorum, and therefore a majority is 6. So we do need 6 to have a successful nominee elected. Right now, we do have 1 vacant position, which is secretary, that was previously held by Colin Mays. So we'll just go down the list and see if we have nominations. So president is currently held by Bob Lux. Do we have any other nominations for president, or leave that position as is? If there are none, then we'll move on to the next. Vice President Ron Wilson. Any changes there? Okay, we'll move on to secretary. We do need a nomination for secretary. Currently, assistant secretary is Paul Martin. Yep. We have a nomination for secretary.
I'd like to nominate Neil Gainer.
Accept the nomination.
Yeah.
Yeah. He looks stunned over there.
It means you have to sign all the minutes.
Oh, I do that in month 6, so
Yeah.
I'm familiar.
All night.
Oh, that experience.
Any other nominations for secretary?
Who's the current secretary?
There's not, it's vacant.
Okay.
If there are no other nominations, all those in favor of trustee Gainer, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations.
Congratulations. Sure. Okay, well, thank you, Walt. I got it.
You can send me a Christmas card.
Oh, yeah.
Assistant secretary is Paul Nelson.
Paul Martin.
Paul Martin, I'm sorry. Paul Martin, do we have any nominations for assistant secretary, or we're comfortable with that position as is? Paul, are you willing to continue to serve in that role?
I am.
Okay. All right, if there are no other nominations, then we will go ahead. I think that concludes our elections.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you very much, board. Okay, we now come to agenda item 8, receive the regular monthly SJRA Woodlands Division report, including updates on operations, projects, and public outreach. Mr. Meeks, good evening.
Good evening. Very short this evening. Last Friday, we had a new mud director orientation. And so that started at our office at 8:30, ended about probably 1:30. There was roughly 32 people in attendance, roughly 10 to 12 from our side and Woodlands Water. So just FYI, I think it was a good orientation. Had a tour as well. So that's all I have unless you have any questions on the report.
I got a question, couple of questions, Chris. On your permitted flow that you've got on page 17 for the wastewater treatment plant, is that the average for the month, or is that, in other words, does that include all the peak flow events that we have during the month? And is, in other words, this is 3.614.
17 wastewater.
Right on the very top there.
3.614 is a 30-day average.
That's a 30-day average. But the average on a dry day is around 3, right?
3.2, 3.3.
Okay, so, but this is the average of the 30 days.
Correct, including the peak.
Thank you. I'd like to request, there's, I think you told me there's 6 different, like BOD and ammonia that are reported every month to the TCQ. What are there, 6 BOD?
The permit.
They're not, right, but in other words, you've got a maximum permitted and then you've got what you actually produce. Can you give us a 5-year history of all those items that are permitted or that are purported to TCQ? In other words, in a graph form with the amount permitted and the actual discharge volume?
Yeah, we've done it multiple times. I just ask all those go through Eric and then he'll advise us if they can be done, and need to be done.
No, but you got the numbers, right?
Correct, but we're asking that everything goes through Eric before it comes to us because that won't take too long, but it could take some time.
Okay.
And so we don't want to eat up 3 or 4 days of everybody's time collecting information for one person. So
I understand.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to see it is in here, just like your 3 or 4 year history of water production.
Oh, you want it in the report?
I want it in the report. So, and once you build it, obviously all you got to do is add a month.
Right.
So,
Now-
but I'd like to see a graph
Yeah.
with all of the actual permitted number, which of course that stays the same. But just see a graph for the last 5 years of BOD, ammonia, anyway, whatever items that are presented to the
This is
TEC.
for all 3 wastewater plants or?
No, I just one, since that's the one of particular interest right now
Well,
in the Woodlands, but would that be reasonable to include in the report?
we can talk about some particulars with it too. It's just one thing is keep in mind that graph will not be updated at the trustees meeting.
No, I understand.
Yeah, because the way that it's a 5-day test. And so the last day we pulled it off, it's 5 days after that, plus then time to report it back to us.
No, I'm,
It's never ready for the trustees.
no. All we're looking at, all I want to see is the history of the last, whether we're 2 months late. Obviously, that's not important.
Yeah.
But what I think it'd be good to everybody to every month see what the permitted volume or amount is from the TCQ. I know you used to have BOD when I was on the board before, which was always of interest to me because anyway. But if you could work with Chris and get us a permanent, just like your water production, have a TCQ report basically in graph form of everything they require so we can see where we stand relative to what the permit allowable is.
And so everybody else will be aware, that's going to be BOD, TSS, ammonia, DO, chlorine's already, dissolved oxygen, chlorine's already in there. So there's other things I don't think we've never reported in there that don't need to get into the details, but those are the general parameters that they test.
Well, whatever you send to the TCQ.
Well, they send a lot. I would
No, but-
suggest that you focus on your effluent parameters.
which
Okay,
is TSS money and beauty. Right, those are the
DL
main.
flooring.
I know those are in, but.
Okay, that's fine.
Those are the ones.
You know, 5 or 6 of the most important ones that should concern people if they get, I'm talking about the residents and the trustees, if we get into numbers that are starting to be close to the permitted volume so that people can see, you know, whether there's been an increase or, in other words, if you get a 5-year history of what's coming out of wastewater treatment one.
Not a problem.
Great.
We've never gotten violations for many of those. Actually, the only one we've had, I didn't think about is E. coli. That's, we have occasional hits on E. coli. But yeah. Talk to them. Yes, sir.
I had a question from one of the new board members, in the plant tour. I didn't go to the plant tour because I've been to the plant many times.
Oh,
But there was a piece of equipment that they were describing. I don't know the name of the piece of equipment, but they described it in a way where it would hold excess water. And in my mind, it sounded like that tank that Priest and Nichols described whenever that was in the potential plan. And I didn't think we had one of those, but they said there was something at the plant that's been down for a long time that handled extra flow. And I was wondering what that is called, because I didn't think we had one, and when it went down.
not a problem. So if you flip to page 17, what you're looking at there is the about middle of the page, aeration basins number 1 and 2.
Okay.
That's exactly. Now, it does not handle extra flow.
Okay.
It's not a peak flow storage basin like what Freeze and Nichols had described.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think those are the two things you're talking about,
Yeah.
which are not, they might have thought it was apples to apples, but aeration basin are the things that have been down.
Oh,
and the
yeah.
Pre-treat,
Yeah. No. As soon as you say aeration bin and what was the thing? The peak flow storage. I mean, I know those from the meetings, that those are very different things, but in their mind, that's kind of how they described it. So I just wanted to be able to speak for them. I wasn't planning on coming to this meeting, but I found out a couple weeks ago I was. And so it looks like it was out of service in 2012.
Correct. That's when number 2 went out of service. Now, one thing is we can still put them both back in service
Okay.
if need be, because they are required by the permit to be able to be put in service if need be.
Okay.
So we have no intention of it, but if push comes to shove, we can't put them in.
Okay. So number 2 is the one that's down. Number 1 is not down.
Number 1 has been down since about 2007, 2008. Roughly. Number 1 went down because it's got some structural beams holding up the walls. Number 2, we pulled all the aerator devices in 2012. And then I guess you could say actually really took them out, and they're sitting on the hill right now about 2 years.
Okay. And I didn't live here. I moved here like in January of 20, so I wasn't here during Harvey. When was Harvey?
2017.
Okay, so all this was down during Harvey and we still made it through.
Aeration basin 2 was put back in temporary service.
Got it. All right, so we did have to bring aeration bin 2 up during that situation. Okay.
And we did make it through on the parameter side, what Mr. Mack was talking about. It was the quantity was exceeded quality. Because remember, during a rainy event, you're treating rainfall at that point, so.
Right. I mean, I think y'all kind of described things, not exact, but a similar topic here recently, right? Where there was a lot of flow, there wasn't a lack of quality. You still got the job done, you still met your parameters, but there was obviously a lot more water than you expected. So you dealt with it, but, and we didn't miss any marks.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Let me clarify that the basins are different than high flow retention. Okay, because I think that's not clear.
Well, I think you
that's
said.
what I was saying.
Yeah, I know, that's why you said, but let's highlight that. Because I don't want anybody walking away thinking these guys were out of service or in service for rainy days. That's not what they're in service for.
Well, it's not the original intent, but in case the flow comes in and we can't slow it down, we do have the option to put them in service for a little bit more detention time. That's not the original intent, but that could be utilized. Yes, sir.
On page 29.
Okay.
So,
looking at the groundwater users, MSEC, are they, part of the contract? You pipeline?
Yes, everybody in this report is part of.
Is part of the contract. So obviously, MSC, Quadvest, are they diminishing their buy?
Sorry.
Are they diminishing their use of, the pipeline water?
Okay, so Quadvest does not get surface water. Quadvest is 100% groundwater.
Okay.
So they're a part of the GRP, but they don't receive surface water. Mid-South, which is MSEC, their facilities burned about 2 months ago, so they can't receive water.
Say it again?
Their facilities burned,
Burn.
on fire, so they can't receive it. They're currently rebuilding right now.
Okay.
You said
How about Aqua Texas?
MSEC, middle column, right above 29.
Right down.
Their water receiving facility actually burned.
What do they service? What area? Wood Forest?
And other entities, but that's the main.
Yeah.
How about Aqua Texas? Are they?
So the middle column here, that says surface water.
Right.
Those 7 entities, those are the only 7 that.
7
receive
entities.
water, having ability with physical.
Has Conroe diminished their purchase of, pipeline water?
No.
It's been 88 is roughly. Wow.
Yeah, they have an annual allocation. What they do sometimes is, because they need water, so they won't take as much, they request less during the winter time, save it more for the summer. So that number kicks a little bit.
Pick up it. Yes.
You go. And Monday, June 24th, at the review committee, I started showing the allocations, what the entity has used to date and what they have remaining for the year. Just so all the entities can know.
Chris, on page 30, the contest where we placed third in the best tasting water, what's the scope of the competition?
So rather than third, we'll say second runner up.
Before, weren't we?
We were, there, so basically it's the best tasting water. It can be groundwater, it can be surface water, it can be blended water, any water whatsoever, as long as it's from the state of Texas, okay? This year it was done in, Fort Worth. And so basically you had celebrity judges like anything generally, and they came in and they tasted all the water and they just picked from there, whatever they liked. And there's judging on clarity, taste, like aftertaste, and they have certain parameters that they look. So I will tell you, the top 2 entities that won were for Dallas. So it's Dallas, and what are they're used to drinking. So, personal opinion.
Were the celebrities from Dallas?
They were.
Jeez, and that's thumb on the scale there.
That's why it's second.
Must not have been a blind taste test.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a blind taste test. So they get all, they bring out the platter and they have all the cups on there and there's numbers and everything.
And there's a blue Cowboys thing on there too, and so they love that water.
Last year, Houston's was led with an H and everybody else had a number, so they won. Yeah, there's a lot of entities. I think there was 26 different entities. That's so being third isn't bad. It's pretty good. Yes, sir.
Chris, back to page 17, 3.0 infrastructure maintenance, the first entry. So finally, Montgomery County did approve the June 3 repair date. What is before, I guess, the repairs to the pipe and I presume the road surface.
Correct.
That's all done now?
Correct. So we talked to the county in, I believe, April. And they gave us a go ahead for June 3rd to repair that line. And so last week, we started June 3rd. And if you drove down Woodlands Parkway towards 45, you probably noticed it down to 2 months. That was a water leak we were fixing.
Okay.
So Monday, Tuesday was fixed. Turns out basically you have the pipe, you have a valve. We thought the valve was leaking. It wasn't on both sides of the valve. There was a blow off valve where they took samples, pressurized test. Those were still there. So we pulled those out, capped them off, covered it back up. Road was open, I think Thursday by noon.
Is this the road that the county wanted to bill you to repair it?
Not this one.
What was the road? It was a
Flint Ridge, wasn't it? Flint Ridge.
Flint Ridge, that was a Woodlands Water Sewer Line a few years ago.
Oh, I thought there was a recent one where
College Park.
you voted the road bad and the county wanted you to pay to fix it.
Oh, the TxDOT road expansion?
No, not TxDOT. It was involved Commissioner Nowak area.
How long ago?
6 months, 7 months, maybe.
Well, this one commissioner had held back approval for a number of months. Because he was asking us to chase an alternative, repair. And so we looked at it, and that was, the alternative repair was to lay a new line outside the right of way for $5 million. For a repair that costs less than what, 20?
So obviously.
So he finally relented and
He lost the election and, elected.
I don't know if that has anything to do with it. He authorized us to go in and repair the line.
One thing to note though is anytime we break up sidewalks, remove trees, tear out the roadway, we replace it at our expense.
I understand.
So trying to think of one where we broke it and did fix it and he wanted us to.
I thought 5 million was high. It was a big number.
Since you're the secretary.
About a mile worth of lot, 16-inch line that would have been replaced to go outside the base.
Any other questions?
Very good.
I've got a couple of things before we move on. At one of the prior meetings, one of the directors had asked for a report. Asked for a report on land acquisition for the waste treatment plant. And so this high level update, and if you'll write at the top of the page and move on future reports that we give you, we'll put a date on it so that put today's date. Just tell you basic status of our land acquisition for the waste water reclamation facility. There's a little bit of a legend down there at the bottom, so you can kind of see what the abbreviations are for. We may be a little further along on the sewer surveys, the meets and bounds surveys. We might be at 12%, but we're still moving along. So if you have any questions, please let Eric know and we'll look at the answer.
So when you reach a point where you have to sign a contract to buy it, you come back and ask permission for that?
No, sir, because you've already approved that.
And that was like this.
Last year's and
I thought all we approved was the basically $1 million to study it, to
No, sir.
accumulate the data. So that was embedded in last year's budget?
R&R. It was $10 million in R&R, in the R&R budget.
Was that broken out by a line number, purchase for land?
Thank you, Paul.
I know this year it is. Last year, I think it was under wastewater or something.
So I remember a meeting in the summer where we approved moving $1 million so that you could begin the process of analyzing the acquisition. But I don't remember any discussion on acquisition of land and actually signing contracts.
You wouldn't be signing contracts.
No, but you would be signing, but
It would be SRA signing contract. Because it would be titled in our name.
yeah, I understand that, but I just don't remember any discussion allocating what, 5 million? Is that what
If
it-
you
7 million?
think back to March of 23, when the trustees authorized 2 items towards the water reclamation facility. One was to go forward with the conveyance line optimization, and 2 was to go forward with land acquisition for the water reclamation facility.
Okay, I'll
And that was to hire consultants and also start.
Yeah, I remember that portion. I just don't remember the portion of approval to actually purchase the land. I thought it was more of a study.
Nothing to study in land acquisition. You find out if the individuals are interested in selling willingly, friendly acquisition or an unfriendly acquisition. Question? Yes, sir.
Is the ownership status of Golden Road?
That's still being determined by our expert.
Okay.
Because there's some question as to whether it was a meets and bounds dedication or if it was by plat. And so that's still being determined.
Okay. So it's question mark around that. Okay.
And just to clarify something, the green tracks that are kind of on the left side of the page, we've gotten some values for those. They're fairly high all four of those tracks are in the floodplain. Some are partially in the floodway. And so we're leaving those to the end because we're waiting to see how we do monetarily on the other tracks. And if we do not acquire the green tracks, we may have to relocate, realign Golden Road so that it's not bisecting the sewer plant.
Yeah, I can see where the gap is.
Right.
Okay.
And essentially it would, Golden Road would go all the way up to the top of the blue and come back down to flat access if that's, if that's the option by not buying those green tracks.
Ed, could you just tell me what the abbreviations are on this page?
They're just below here. It's a small print.
Right. Okay.
I have a question. Maybe a year and a half ago, when we first started, or when we were getting down to the stakeholder meetings at the SGRA facility, there's a discussion about the neighborhood that was north of the facility and how they were incurring stink or complaints of smells.
Yes.
I hadn't really thought about that a whole lot until just now when y'all mentioned, if we don't get through the green plots, we may have to put more in the blue. Would that cause for those areas north of blue to have more potential, for lack of a better word, stinkiness? Yeah. And the reason I bring it up, I mean, it's a pretty affluent area. So, I mean, those people are going to, it's not gonna go unsmelled.
So first off, there was a number of studies done to try to determine the source of the odor. Thank you. Y'all offered us up to about $500,000 worth of work to be done in identifying the source. Come to find out, as one of the residents was remodeling their townhome, plumber found an uncapped vent pipe.
Oh,
And so
understood.
they were smelling sewer odors inside their house with the windows closed.
Got it. All
And
right.
so
Problem solved.
for the most part, problem solved. Now, there still is a little bit of an odor around the sewer plant. And we have a sanitary control easement or a buffer between the plant and residents.
That's mandated.
That's state law. And
So
so,
that's the question I remember there was a mandate of a fee.
right. And so most of what might go in those blue tracks is some maintenance buildings.
Okay, good. Yeah, just want to make sure.
And still leave the tree buffer.
Good.
Unless we have to relocate Golden Road.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, anything else on the second thing I wanted to brief you all on? Leading into the election and also into the new director orientation, we had a number of directors mention that on the water reclamation facility, they would like to see a comparison of something more than just the MBR. And several directors had mentioned conventional technology, typically what the type of process treatment we have at the plant today. We heard that. And then also during the new director orientation, we heard that there were some directors interested in also comparing that against replacement of the plant in place. And so what we're proposing to do, and we will be going to the MUDs next week, get you all thinking about this, because there's no request for action tonight. This is just to give you an idea of what's coming to the MUDs next week. So it could be in your all's trustee report to the MUDs. What we're proposing to do is do an evaluation of the treatment technologies, and that's the conventional, repair, replace in place, and then the MBR. Get updated type layouts to show what fits on the property, what doesn't fit. Look at the pros and cons of each type of those technologies. I'll come back to you, Sean, in just a minute. What where the benefits to MBR are versus the benefits to conventional technology versus benefits or disadvantages to replacing in place. In addition to that, we're going to be evaluating delivery method of how we would deliver this project, whether it's construction manager at risk, you've heard the acronym CMAR, or whether it's competitive sealed proposal, which is a way we do a lot of our smaller projects. Competitive sealed proposal is similar to a go out and advertise for bid, but it requires the contractor to provide kind of a written scope of how we would approach the project. We would also update all of the cost estimates for each of the methods, each of the process methods, and also compare the costs for the construction manager at risk for any one of these projects against the competitive sealed proposal. Because of the size of the project, we've got to publicly advertise it for bid. There are some advantages to CMAR. There's some advantages and disadvantages to CMAR. There are advantages to the competitive sealed proposal, just like there are disadvantages. So we want to put all of that together in an analysis and bring back to you all so that you can see, because there have been a number of questions, you can see which way we're leaning. The one other thing that we will be adding, we're proposing to add to this is if we go construction manager at risk, state statute requires that we have an owner's advisor. And that category would provide us certain manpower during design and during construction. So we want to make certain that we're looking at internal and external manpower needs as part of this analysis, because that's part of the life cycle. That's part of the cost of the project. And as part of this, we're also looking at a 50-year operation and maintenance horizon, similar to what we did in the original stakeholder meetings on the NBR, so that everything's evaluated the same. It's, you know, if you want to use the phrase apples to apples comparison. But we wanted to kind of give you an idea. We've been listening. We've heard what you all have asked for. We thought it was prudent to come back to you and say, we're more than willing to do this because there are a lot of questions. The other part, and this is kind of a key point, some of the MUDs have already approved a supplemental agreement. Some have not. We're going to recommend that any discussion about a supplemental agreement be put on pause until we can come back with the analysis and the recommendations out of the study. We think this study will take somewhere between 6 and 8 months. Now, I know in the past, some of you all have asked, well, what is this going to cost? We don't know because we don't have a refined scope of work. But to go get the refined scope of work, we need to have a basis for what we're chasing. And by coming to you all tonight and also next week, we're hoping that you will give us some insight if this is the type of stuff, the type of information that you all are seeking, you want us to see to answer the questions that are still pending. Thoughts, questions? Sean, you had your hand up first. I'll come back to Dave.
I appreciate the additional analysis. I appreciate the clarity. I was at the stakeholder meetings when Reese Nichols was there. I was at the meeting when the gentleman representing the MBR technology came in that meeting. I was there whenever we were told that due to the analysis and the scope of the project as it's pretty well been laid out, that at that point, MBR was a quote unquote better technology, to help provide clean discharge.
Correct.
And potentially, I'll say potentially in line with then potentially where the state may go in the future, again, potentially, because all these are unknowns. And it would end up being cheaper. So generally that room voted yes for MBR because we were told in that meeting that it was better technology. It was leaning towards where the state of Texas was going and it was cheaper. So we were told that it was better and cheaper. But what I'm hearing now is that what I'm assuming now is that it potentially is that cost or that opinion may be changed due to time and inflation or cost or design. I'm assuming that there's a change.
What's changed is there are directors that are interested in having a true comparison all the way to compare the two, apples to apples, all aspects. I think what consulted, if my memory is somewhat in the ballpark, he said MBR is plus or minus 10% of conventional when you look at life cycle cost. Now, there have been at least two things that have come up since all of this conversation and stakeholder meetings occurred. Earlier, we were talking about storm flow going through the sewer plant, both earlier this month, and even if you go back as far as Hurricane Harvey. Storm flow exceeded our 2-hour peak by at least 10 million gallons. Part of the issue is, where do we put that volume of water in an MBR plant? Because there'd be an equalization tank. That equalization tank might be 1.5 million, 2 million gallons, but then you still have another 8 or 9 million gallons to deal with. So MBR technology, while it's very good at processing to a very clean water, there would be some added cost to deal with excessive peak flow, because you don't just put it out in the stream bed and not do something with it. You gotta give it some sort of treatment. So there's one. The other thing with MBR, and we encounter this a little bit at our GRP plant. When our electronics go down, our SCADA, our supervisory network, we're shut down. And with the surface water plant, that's fine, because that's supplemental water to everybody we provide surface water to. The sewer plant is not supplemental. It is primary treatment. We got to have it. Without it, it's a nasty discharge into the street. And so that's one of the reasons we would like to take another look at conventional versus MBR. Is on conventional, if electronics go down, we can still operate a plant and process sewage. We still meet state criteria. If we get a peak flow like we did earlier in May, we still have an ability to treat the high flows with at least chlorine and put it out in the stream without sending raw sewage out.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the three primary reasons to reevaluate at this time are potential cost.
Correct.
Potential quality for our community to maintain high quality water, and depending on conventional or MBR, but quality is number one, and also addressing peak flow for the storms that we've had and potentially will have in the future.
And the fourth item would be, yes, we're anticipating future regulatory requirements to have a tighter discharge limit. But that's probably not for at least 3 permit cycles. And that's anywhere from 9 to 15 years.
Okay, great. I love the analysis. I'm behind it, so.
Okay, great, David.
So, does this change in position include a detailed analysis of what it would take to maintain the current plant?
Well, that's part of the replace.
Okay, so you're gonna step back and look at what it costs to maintain the
Yes.
current plant.
But to ensure that we're doing it on an apples to apples comparison, and I'm gonna tell you up front, it's a replace in place at one time, not phased approach.
Say that again. Replace, what do you mean by that?
Replace in place. So if we go in, hang on, if we have to replace the aeration bases because some are out of, they have structural defects and they have to be upgraded. The minute we do that, that's going to require, the state's going to come in and require that we also do the chlorine contact chamber because it's undersized. It's also going to require us to meet other Chapter 217 rules and regulations associated with wastewater treatment. So we're looking at it from the perspective of replace in place, not not go into the new land. And we also know, and you've heard this, clarifiers are undersized, they're shallow. And they don't have enough detention time, enough treatment. So the minute we touch those, we have 3 now, we could end up with 5 or 6.
So how do you maintain the plant now if you have 3 clarifiers, which apparently need, the mechanisms, let's call it mechanisms in place.
Clarifier drives.
Yeah, clarifier drives. So if you just replace the drives, how does that affect permitting? You just update.
This wouldn't be replacing just the drives. This would be replacing the entire basin because they're shallow in comparison to how clarifiers are designed today.
Okay, but when you designed it before, they're apparently working now. Is that?
Yes, they work, but they are undersized. They don't meet the criteria. And the minute you start changing certain aspects of the plant, TCQ is going to say, you've got to go in and update.
Clarification, so you say we might end up with 6. Is that the 3 existing plus 3 new ones? Or is that
It'd
6
be
new ones?
6 new. It could be.
I don't understand that.
Because the 3 that we have today are undersized.
But the effluent's meeting all the specs, right?
Effluent may be meeting the specs, but if you have facilities that are not in compliance, they're going to require you to replace them.
So it sounds like one of the reasons that they're needing to be replaced is because of a grandfathering type rule where they once were up to spec. The spec now is potentially different.
Rules have changed.
Understood.
They were probably designed under Chapter 317, which goes back 15 years. And then the new chapter was updated.
So Ed, I'm sure with this replace in place, which y'all could have with footnotes and notes to say, okay, the original ones were constructed pursuant to this provision, the new ones, if it triggers additional things that have to be done, you have footnotes that refer to those specific legal requirements that directors can see.
Talk about your topic now.
To, justify the reason for additional expenditures.
I'd encourage you to be consistent and cross-check the 2023 proposed plan. You had a full maintenance schedule in there, what was going to be replaced.
That was just to keep, if I remember correctly, that 2-column list was just to keep things operational beyond 2030, 2033. But at that point, something was going to have to be done.
We were told that was to replace for another full 50-year life.
No, sir. You misunderstood. There is no way that 2-column list
Were
was
they
going
like
to
Band-Aids or
50
were they
years.
the replacement kind?
That was not a 50-year replacement.
And who's going to do the engineering?
On the
this-
engineering,
This,
this analysis,
no, whatever you just are
what I just talked about,
proposing, yeah, who's going to do
this
this?
analysis I've just talked about will be a third-party consultant.
No, who?
That has not been selected.
Okay, good.
It will not be Freeze Nichols.
So
Yes,
I'm a little hazy on the 6 to 8 months. At what point are you going to know what the cost of this project is?
at the end of that time.
So we're committing to an 8-month contract that we don't know the amount.
Correct. Well, no. Let me back up there. You're committing to the concept. We will come back once we have a scope and we have a proposal and share it with you. But right now, we don't have that because the meeting was last week. This is fair. We're trying to move quickly to keep this moving.
Yeah.
Other questions?
So what do you want next month? I mean, next week?
Next week, if you all have anything that you would like to add to this concept, please share it with Eric so we can get it included. But as I laid out, we're going to look at the three ways, the 2 different technologies, plus repair replace in place. We're gonna look at delivery method. We're gonna look at costs. We're gonna look at site layout so that we know how, whether it fits or not. And we're gonna look at manpower needs.
And this would be funded up through,
Be funded through, right now, it's R&R funds.
Got something in writing this week from us.
What would you like in writing?
Well, you should
Because
fill out.
this is what I'm gonna say to the MUD next week.
Put it in the paper.
I can.
Yeah, I've got an agenda item that for next meeting that I've written out. We're about to get there, but this is an agenda item that I'd already prepared. And it's items for July 7th or the July 10th trustee meeting. And what I want to put on the agenda is that Woodlands Water and the trustee board hire an engineering consulting firm to evaluate wastewater treatment plant one with the specific purpose of obtaining recommendations and cost estimates to rehab the existing plant to extend the life for 25 years. And I know I can't discuss it. I'm ready to make a presentation on justifying that. But anyway, that's what I want on the agenda, and hopefully everybody will you will put it on the MUD agenda for next week. And this is not beyond precedent, but in a nutshell, I think what we ought to have is we got a lot of technically expert people. We got one on my BUD board, and that we've got a accounting group, personnel group that we established, an engineering group committee of maybe 3 people. Then we sit down also with the consultant and also have an input on picking because we're paying the bill. So anyway, I've already typed it out, but if we can put that on the agenda, and Shelley, I got it all typed up. You don't have to figure out. But anyway, that's what I'd like to do is discuss that we be more technically involved. And I'm glad to hear that you're not going to hire Freeze Nichols.
Would you mind rereading your?
Here, I'll let you take it, but I got it. But anyway.
Very good. Thank you for that input. Terrific. Anything else? Anything else for Mr. Shackelford? Thank you, Ed. Drive safe. Let's see, where are we? We are to agenda item number 9, receive and discuss draft 2025 SJRA Woodlands Division budget. This was presented in May. It will be voted on in August. Does anybody have anything additional that hadn't been previously discussed? Any input or comment which they'd like to make at this time regarding this matter? Hearing none, we move to agenda item number 10. Receive the attorney's report, Brian. Thank you, sir. Receive the general manager's report, Mr. Peterson.
sure, thank you. Just real quick, wanted to report that we did conduct 2 orientations for new directors on the 5th and 10th last week and this week. I feel like they went very well. Had good response from folks. Something that I've decided to kind of sitting through those orientations, I've decided to develop for the education of all directors, new or existing, is to build a kind of a workshop series. And so what we're going to be doing is developing kind of a library of topics that we would from time to time bring in or invite all directors, whoever wants to, on various topics to come in and talk. We had a couple hours, we talked about a lot of stuff, and I expressed to everyone that, it's not possible to get, all the information out in an hour or 2, a quick presentation, and recognizing that there might be certain topics that we really want to delve, further into as it relates to WWA or all the things that we have going on. So I'm going to be looking at building that workshop series library. If you have any ideas or topics that you think would be beneficial to be developed as such, please send them to myself and Shelley. And we'll be working on developing those. And that is all I had for tonight.
Just as a comment, I'd like to compliment you and your group for putting together that presentation. Because 20 years ago, I was elected to the board, and that was back when there were very few elections. And people didn't like it. You know, that was kind of a clique up here. And so I basically learned under fire. I was a 4-1. There was a lot of 4-1 votes initially when I was on. But, you know, simple things like who owns the lines, you know, the size, you know, so a lot of that I learned by just being here. But the presentation you gave, particularly since I want to compliment you and encourage you to, when we get new directors, to keep it up because it's very good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if we could improve the mics for the audio portion of the recording. It's
We're working on it as we speak.
okay. I appreciate that.
We were gonna, I'll be bringing some things to you as we start develop the WWA budget, which generally I think we bring to you starting in July. I believe it's the first month you see that. Is that right? August. And so there's some things in there. As you recall, last year, there were some facility improvements. We've done some. You'll probably likely see me put some things in the budget next year for technology, sprucing up some things around the office, as well as possibly even we're talking about putting TVs and things so that this room is a little bit more functional for meetings like this. I know that's what we have right now, and it works. But there was comments also that, you know, if you can't physically fit in this room, then you can't really hear what's going on for the bigger crowds. So we're actually talking about doing something out there so people overflow. It's a little bit harder to move walls and make this, you know, we're working with what we have. So long story short, we're working on some proposals, and you'll probably see some of that in the budget. But as far as the mics, we may be able to do something a little bit sooner within the budget already. So we're working on it.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, agenda item number 12, receive staff or ad hoc committee updates on the following. Personnel Committee. Eric, you want to take that?
Personnel Committee, we had a brief meeting last month just to talk about a personnel item, but don't have any update at the moment.
Thank you. Audit and Finance Committee, Mr. Wilson.
No meeting.
No meeting, no report. Public Education Committee. You
Yeah,
can't hide. We know you had a meeting.
yeah. Just before this meeting, the PC met to discuss progress on the communications plan. The committee is currently reviewing the draft version of supportive materials for the plan, including key messaging, survey questions on infrastructure renewal, communications website domain and content, a community advisory group charter, and communications branding. The website is targeted for a go live date after July 10th, which would be the next trustee meeting. And I want to give you all a heads up. There'll be a all MUD meeting to update all directors on the communications plan during the week of August 5th. And more information to come. Subject to change, of course. It depends on progress. So that is my report.
Excellent. Very good. Good work, Neil. Okay, we move to agenda item 13. No need to recess to. Yes, sir.
We've got new trustees. Are you going to relook at committee memberships?
Yes.
And how we're going to do that?
I don't know. I'm going to talk to Brian Yates about that. I've never done it before. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn the right way.
I have an interest. I don't know. I think Keith might and Ken might.
Good. Thank you.
I don't even know who's on these committees now, to be honest with you.
Okay. We'll this will be an agenda item next month.
That was what I was going to suggest.
Very good.
Any closed session on Thursday.
Okay. So no need to reconvene. Discuss matters for placement on future agendas. Anybody?
Months ago, I had requested the DNO coverage and the policy to be presented. So I want to make sure that it's on all the flood agendas and that discussion is had.
So that's gonna be a closed session item.
What was that?
You won't see it on the agenda.
Paul, what was that? Since we weren't here, you said you'd request.
Directors and officers, liability insurance.
Oh, okay. Since I wasn't
Do's and
at
don'ts.
the other meetings.
That would touch on all directors.
Absolutely. Your personal assets for the resident.
I'm sure they're all in retirement accounts or your homestead.
If there's no further agenda items or any further discussion, I'll adjourn this meeting.